Thank you.
That's fair.
It is customarily open, but it's closed today. It opens, it changes depending on the force threat to the White House.
All right. Once again, my name is Jamel Benz, and I'm with Refuse Fascism. And it's so important that you're here today. We're here to make a statement, and we're joined by Carl Dix and Reverend Lamar. Of Metropolitan AME Church. It matters that we are here today, each and one of you and all of us here together. Last Wednesday, the world witnessed with shock MAGA mobs storming the U.S. Capitol, climbing the walls, smashing the windows, rampaging through the halls and looting congressional offices, called forth and unleashed by Donald Trump, who could even be called the wannabe second president of the Confederacy. Even after this violent siege, 8 GOP senators and 139 representatives, that's 2/3 of the Republicans in the House of Representatives, still voted to overturn this election. A new poll yesterday showed that 77% of Republicans still supported Trump after this attempted coup. This was an attempted fascist coup, and it was years in the making. That is the word, fascism. What is that? It's vigilantes shooting Black Lives Matter protesters. It's open white supremacy. It's refugees in concentration camps. It's paramilitary forces using violence to suppress dissent. It is lie upon lie, such that the very concept of what is real and what is true is destroyed. It is outright theocrats dominating the courts. It is the brazen, open attempt to overturn the election of Biden. It's the shredding of even the pretense of democracy. Now Trump must go. The fascists are still rampaging at state houses around the country. They're both bragging about their accomplishments, threatening further mayhem, and they're already making their assault on January 6th a rallying cry to come back. Trump, for his part, is upholding the stormtroopers and is repeatedly and even more bellicose and unhinged. Every day Trump remains in power, he poses a catastrophic danger to humanity. And what is more, he must be decisively repudiated, impeached, and convicted, which would mean he would never come back into elected office. And even more important, this would be a real setback to the fascist movement that he leads. This movement is not going away, even with Trump removed. There are tens of millions of people who have been led, organized, and shaped in a fascist direction. With their own media, schools, and institutions, for over 40 years, to view themselves as the real America. There are elected officials at all levels of government who view and will act as if the Biden administration is illegitimate. And they now will have an armed street fighting force, on call and filled with revenge. Inside and outside the halls of power, they will continue to fight for their white supremacist, xenophobic, and patriarchal programs. And they will continue to undermine the very concept of truth, leaving tens of millions to be susceptible to the calls of demagogues and the vilest conspiracy theories. If millions of people who desire a just world, who care about humanity, fail to act, it will not appease these fascists. It will leave them a clear field to act. We saw on Wednesday just where this leads. Now is the moment. as calls ricochet through Congress and to impeach Trump, to put our bodies on the streets in non-violent but determined ways, to demand Trump's immediate removal. Already there is talk, including by some Democrats, that impeachment would only further divide the country. That it's time to move forward and get to the work of healing the country and governing. But the road to Wednesday's fascist coup attempt was paved by this very refusal to hold Trump and his fascists accountable. Again and again, over the past 4 years, we didn't hold Trump accountable after Charlottesville. We didn't hold them accountable after the children locked in cages. Not after Trump's acquittal in a weakly pursued impeachment on very narrow grounds, which only cemented Trump's belief that he was above the law. That's where this came from. This passivity and accommodation must end now. To wait longer, to hold back, amounts to nothing but capitulation. Now must be the time for decent people to stand up, non-violently and in massive numbers, from many different backgrounds and political perspectives, but united in our determination to act. We demand Trump's immediate removal to stop the tremendous harm he can do in the next 11 days. We demand this now, as part of building the strength of our side to fight decisively, to defeat this fascism that has been allowed to fester and spew forth. Note well, a failed coup can lead a successful coup, a legitimate return to power, fueled by the same fascist program with a vengeance. The struggle for the future is far from over. Humanity needs you to stay in the streets, using safe disease prevention, but most of all demonstrating your values of respect for diversity and your hunger for justice. In stark contrast to the hate and bigotry of a vicious American fascism. Stay in the streets until our demand is met and call forth others. They lost. Trump and Pence need to pack up and go. Trump, Pence out now! Trump, Pence out now! In the name of humanity! In the name of humanity! We refuse to accept a fascist America. All right, so next up, that was a statement from refusefascism.org, and these rallies are taking place, these conferences and rallies just like this are taking place all over the country. Right now, next up, we're going to bring up a co-initiator of Refuse Fascism. This is Carl Dix of the Revolutionary Communist Party, a longtime fighter in the struggle against fascism and white supremacy, founder of the October 22nd Coalition to stop criminalization and repression of a generation. Carl Dix, give it up.
I want to thank Jamel for that introduction. The brief time I spent writing this is because we had some concerns expressed to us about, given the global pandemic that the country is in the midst of, should we come out and do this? And we decided, I decided, Reverend Lamar decided that it is more dangerous what could ensue if we did not come out. So we're going to practice the best procedures on controlling the pandemic, but we felt we had to be out here even in the face of that risk. So let me get right to it. This was a fascist coup attempt. That's what we saw on Wednesday. We saw it in the people who stormed the Capitol building, and we also saw it in the more than 130 Republican members of the House of Representatives and the 7 senators who voted to try to overturn the election that Trump lost even after the storming of the Capitol building. This was fascism. Fascism is vicious, unrestrained white supremacy, police terror, male supremacy, vicious America #1 chauvinism that we saw manifested in the immigrants put in concentration camps on the border, and unleashed and unrestrained attacks on the environment of the very planet that we live under. Together with that is the denying of truth and also the turning aside of all the rules and norms of how the society has been governed, including overthrowing elections. Let's be clear about that. People were correct to say this was unprecedented in modern American history, but we must recognize that it is also rooted in American history. Those people who stormed the Capitol building are the political descendants of the white mobs that attacked civil rights marchers, the Ku Klux Klanners that murdered civil rights leaders and activists and bombed black churches. And I can take that all the way back to Reconstruction and the Confederacy. That's the history that this came out of. This must be stopped. And in doing that, an important step is that Trump gotta go. Trump must go now. He must go now because he organized and incited this fascist coup attempt, capping his 4 years of perpetrating a fascist agenda in this country. People say, well, he's going to be gone in 11 days, Carl. Why don't you just let him alone? He promised to be nice. First off, the man is a liar, a proven liar, and no promise to be nice should be accepted. He is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military for the next 11 days. He can do irreparable damage around the world and in this country. He has got to go. Beyond that, the fascist battering ram that he unleashed on Wednesday is not going anywhere, even if he leaves the White House. They will still be in Congress, in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, on the federal bench, and those MAGA mobs will be spread throughout society. We have to deliver a firm repudiation of this to deal a setback to that fascist movement, because this is a fight that will continue past the inauguration. It will not disappear with attempts to work across the aisle. We have to, Trump has got to go, and it is important that people of goodwill, the decent people in this society, make that known. We cannot allow a marker to be set that a president who attempts a fascist coup and fails can walk away with no punishment, because that just opens it up for the next fascist to do a coup attempt that is better planned, more organized. That's how we have to do it, and it does have to come from below. It does have to come from the decent people, the 80 million people who voted against Trump, many of whom took to the streets to celebrate right after. And I was in the streets celebrating with them. I was down in Philadelphia at the time. We have to do this because if we leave it to the people on top, they will conciliate these fascists the way they have done for 4 years. They will raise, some of them will raise some criticisms, but they will not act decisively to stop it. What we need, the people who hate the white supremacy, who hate the male supremacy, who hate the attacks on immigrants, the destruction of the environment, the attacks on LGBT them to stand up and say, we reject and repudiate all of this mess. We refuse to accept it. We will not allow it. And we will come out in our masses to demonstrate that refusal to accept it in mass nonviolent protest. That's what needs to go down. Trump must go now. Trump gotta go, and he gotta go now. Don't give him no 11 days to do whatever he might do to mess this up. And don't let it sit there a precedent that a sitting fascist autocrat can carry this kind of mess out. Thank you.
Alright, so you just heard from Carl Dix of the Revolutionary Communist Party. Next up, I want to introduce Reverend Lamar of Metropolitan AME Church right here in Washington, D.C. If you remember, Reverend Lamar is the pastor at the church who last month, their Black Lives Matter banner and placard was vandalized by Proud Boys coming to this city once again to maraud and vandalize the city in the name of white supremacy. Give it up one more time for Reverend Lamar.
Thank you all very much. We are here to bear witness like Ida Wells bared witness against lynching, to bear witness like Fannie Lou Hamer bore witness against fascist oppression of black votes in Mississippi. We are here to bear witness because the impulse that had them to stand up has not been broken or buried in the United States. That fascist impulse to control, to suppress, the white supremacist impulse from the very founding of this nation continues to thrive. And the fans of that have been flamed by the current occupants of the White House. From the Oval Office, right behind us, he instructed mobs via Twitter to show up and to show out and to intimidate. We are clear that we must build a counterforce, a large human counterforce from all around the nation, from coast to coast, standing up and putting our bodies on the line so that they might know that we stand against everything that they stand for. We are here to bear witness, but also we're here to imagine and to build a different world. What we see is not what has to be. If we join together, we can build the kind of world where human flourishing is the reason of political discourse. We can flourish by making sure that every human being has health care. We can flourish by making sure that every worker is paid a living wage, benefits, and has retirement. And right now, what we've got to do in order to make sure that we can begin to build that new world is to get Donald Trump and Mike Pence out of office immediately. It is not enough for us to turn a blind eye and to say he will be gone in 11 days. God created the world in 7 days in our tradition, and Mr. Trump can destroy it in fewer than 7. I mean, to be very, very clear that not punishing him and not punishing the fascist white supremacist hordes will lead to a second romanticization of white supremacy. The first is the lost cause of the Civil War. The North may have won the war, but the South won the culture with the cult of the lost cause. They were not punished, and so they were able to romanticize the story. We cannot allow this story to be romanticized. The president and all of his enablers must be prosecuted, and history must record them as criminals, such as to deter this kind of action in the future. And so we demand from our political leaders the immediate removal of this president, while understanding, as my colleagues have said, it will not end fascism, but it will show that there is a counterforce. And if we continue to bear witness and build a new world, more people will join us in building a United States and a globe where human beings can flourish together. They came to our church to tear down our sign and to intimidate us. But we are bolder about the work of human freedom and liberation. We will not be deterred. We will not be intimidated. We're in the streets now. We'll be in the streets tomorrow. And we will continue this work of building a world where all human beings can live in dignity. Thank you.
Y'all give it up one more time for Reverend Lamar. Calling people out into the streets to demonstrate unexhibited courage in the face of unprecedented horror. One more time for Reverend Lamar and Carl Dix. Look, the unity between this is important, and this is exactly what Refuse Fascism speaks to. All of you here, yes, everyone with cameras, everyone with signs, and everyone within earshot. We all saw what happened on Wednesday, right? Yeah. We all saw what happened. Look, this is the first time in any of our lifetimes that the Confederate flag has flown over the Capitol. What does that flag represent? For dragging black people back to the chains of slavery. And what do the people who put it there? What do they represent? But nothing less but the second coming of the Confederacy. They are not backing down right now. They're digging their heels in and claiming this as a victory. We have to be the ones that call people into the streets to say, hell no! Hell no! Hell no! It is not happening here. We are not letting that go down. And as Trump calls them, like he called them on January 6th, to lay siege here, as this continues to happen and these fascists stay in the streets, we have to actually be out in the streets, as Reverend Lamar said, to be an opposing force. We actually have to be out in the streets to drive them out, and we gotta drive Trump out now. We can't wait 11 days. Every day that he stays in office is a horror for humanity. And every day that we enable these fascists by staying home, horrors can happen and they can continue. So we gotta be out in the streets, y'all. We're with Refuse Fascism, and we're calling all of you guys to get organized. This is part of people are making statements like this, holding conferences and rallies from Refuse Fascism all over the country, in Seattle, in Cleveland, in New York, in Los Angeles, all over the country right now. So I thank you for being part of today's action. In the wake of the horror that happened on Wednesday, look, there's no more important thing that you could be doing right now, for real. They're getting this message out that Trump needs to get out now. They lost. Pack up, drive up the U-Haul to the White House, lock the doors, and get the hell out of here. Trump, Pence out now. Trump, Pence out now. My name is Jamel Lips. Get connected with refusefascism.org for details. Stay out on the streets. We'll be calling people back out into the streets in a mass way to make sure that we drive them out of power. Look, that's the only thing that's
in Philadelphia, Mississippi, on top of the bones of Goodman, Cheney, and Swarner. They have been whipped out for generations, and we have to eliminate politicians who grow strong, whipping up white supremacy and resentment. It is nothing new. It is the same energy that destroyed Tulsa. It's the same energy that destroyed Wilmington in 1899, and it has to stop.
Quick question.
These fascists are not going away. 74 million of them are not going to just disappear.
What is your take as a resident of a city on just
The only thing that can
opposite
stop
of the
us
way that
is millions
things were
of us
dealt with
in the
on
streets,
that day when it
in
came to
overwhelming person
protesting
numbers,
and trying
to
stop
say
them.
this
And the way
is
this
not
got on
happening
Wednesday,
here.
which we also
We will not go
It's
back.
clear by law and custom
Trump, get
that
out
black people,
now.
brown people, LGBTQIA people are not treated
All right,
like white
thank
people.
you. Everyone
And
be
this
safe.
nation is deeply rooted in white supremacy. And anyone who saw what happened on Wednesday, the impunity with which
Oh, yo, okay, shut up. We
insurrectionists
gotta make sure to
took
shut
over
up
the
all the
Capitol,
people
there can be no
that came out here
question
today.
that white supremacy
Every single make some noise for
foundation
yourself,
of
for
this
real.
nation.
For
We gotta
real.
be clear about that, and those
So
of us who
all
want to
the
see
people
something
that came out here
different can't just lament it and
So
mourn it. We
black
gotta get in the
people
streets,
Alexandria
build
for
political
doing
power
this, make
to
some
create
noise.
something different.
Do you think the calls for charges against the people
Everyone who's
namely
gotten this
the
statement out,
leader of the Latinos
look, and
attack that
everyone
was
recording,
arrested
make
for
sure
that
to
act,
spread
do
this
you think
far
that
and
that was
wide.
more political
Right,
people,
and
or do you think they
continue
were
to
genuinely
call
interested
people out.
in prosecuting
Every
people?
day that there
I think it's
continues to
very
be
hard for me
violence
to
around this
speculate
is
as to
another
their
day.
intentions.
So
What
we
I
say
believe
it's okay.
is that they need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the
Right?
law.
But shout out to
Because their
everybody for
impunity
coming
will
out.
only allow
All
new
right,
people
let's make
like
sure
them to
again
rise
to
up.
stay
So we got to
as we
demand that the
exit and
law
as we
do
go
what the
forward
law
from
is
here.
supposed to do.
And if I may add,
Like that? How come people
could I add
acting like
something
that
here?
on that day?
Let me add this. The Proud Boys videotaped themselves committing an act of vandalism. They put it up on social media. In other words, they confessed to it, and the authorities have yet to accept that mass confession. They arrested one person. I don't know why they chose that one person. I'm not going to say here is why, although you got to think about why they took that one. You got to think about it, because all the other folks in that video were white, but they have to actually act on this and act in the way they're supposed to, because they are underscoring why we have to raise the cry, Black Lives Matter. We have to raise it because the society tells us again and again that they do not matter. Black people go out and protest a murder that everybody's seen before their faces, and then they get brutalized by the people who murdered the person in the first place, and then nobody gets punished for that brutalization that happened. Then we see all this mostly almost lily white mob storm the Capitol. There are no cops out in riot gear. National Guard was here, but they were not deployed to stop it. I could have told you something was going to go down because I looked on Twitter. I said, these folks is coming and they coming rough. And they did nothing. So they're telling you that if black people move to do something about their injustice, they face brutality. White mobs go to do some injustice, and
They face hospitality.
yeah, they face hospitality.
Is it fair to say
That needs to be looked at.
Is it
That
fair to
needs to
say
be.
that them vandalizing the church and burning the BLM flag was not only a microcosm but fair warning to law enforcement that this group is capable of vandalizing and breaking into the sacred zone?
Of course, they've been doing this for a very long time. And I think what is clear too, I was in the city during the BLM uprising, and as Carla said, the city was militarized. And for one reason, because those who were standing looked like me. We have to be very clear that difference in treatment is fundamental to the institutions in the United States of America. Therefore, fundamentally, we've got to start over with a political tradition that is truly multi-ethnic, multi-racial, and democratic. That is not what we have experienced, but that is what we can experience if we come together.